Alright guys, Aaron with ReelSpeed here again, and today we're doing a video tutorial on a Daiwa LD35 2-speed lever drag reel. I want to say thanks to Ray for bringing it down for me to service it and do the video on it. So thought you guys might be interested in this, so let me know what you think. Here we go. First thing I'm going to do is test the free spool. I just set it to a very, very light spool setting. Once it's engaged, just enough to where it keeps the spool from spinning. So, go and press start. So pretty much 31 seconds. So not too bad. We'll test it when we're all done and see what the cleaned out bearings do. Alright, let's start by taking let's start by taking these 3 screws out, and we'll remove the right side plate here. Those are dry. It's dry, a little bit of salt on the bottom of that screw. That one's dry as well. Alright. Oh. One more screw here, hiding underneath the lever. Okay. Separate very easily. Okay. Left side plate. A little bit of grease down on the clicker. For the most part, everything else is dry. So, definitely use a little bit more lube there. We'll look at the underside of the spool. No grease on that. So, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's take care of the left side first here. Alright, well, I'm just going to put a nice little coating of grease on the inside of this spool, or the inside of the side plate, sorry. Alright, the reel seat is riveted on, so can't really grease down inside of there, so that's not the greatest of things. Let's take out these 2 screws right here, the gear cover. It just lifts off. So just put a little bit of grease right underneath it right here. And we'll go ahead and grease the screw holes. Put that back on and button these screws back down in there. Okay. Alright, so pretty much left side plate is done now. Not a whole lot left there to do. So we'll just set that to the side. Let's get to the right side plate and the spool. So always make sure your lever is in the free spool position, so all the way back. And we'll go ahead and unscrew okay. It's the top of the positioning. Pull this off. And your spool should come right out of the side plate. Okay. Alright, let's pull this drag plate off here. So you have a small bearing down inside of here. Looks like it has a little bit of grease on it. We'll check and we'll pull the covers and see how much is actually there. I'll give you a close-up of that. There you go. And spring. Alright, we'll go ahead and remove these 3 screws on the bottom so you can get to the axle here. These are all Phillips head, small Phillips head. Alright. Looks like those screws have a little bit of Loctite on them, so not a big fan of that. If those corrode inside of there, you have a real hard time getting them out. Set those to the side. Okay. Remove this little pin at the base. Don't lose it. Pull off the clicker mechanism. And we should be able to slide out the spool shaft. Alright. So here's your Bellevue washers. And they are cupped like normal, like this. And here's your spool bearing. Some grease on it, so not spinning the greatest, but we'll clean it out and see how it goes. Then you have one more spool bearing up in here, a small one. Pull that out. Okay. Go ahead and give you some sizes on these bearings here. The bottom spool bearing, the millimeters, is a 17 millimeter OD and there's a little thrust washer underneath it, so don't lose that, by 7mm ID and a 5mm width. And the top spool bearing is a 13mm OD by 6mm ID and a 5mm width. So those are your two spool bearings. And again, your spool shaft assembly, you have your shaft, your two Bellevue washers that are cupped, little small thrust washer, and then you have your spool bearing. So we'll set that to the side here. Okay, now you've got a nice carbon fiber drag washer, so that's good. And it looks like on these they are glued down, I'm going to say. Yep, so looks like Daiwa went ahead and glued these down just like Abbott does, so hopefully they did a good job underneath. If there's any high spots or low spots in there, you'll find that out because the drag won't function smoothly. And you have the possibility of corrosion underneath it, so we'll see. Right now it looks pretty clean on the top, so that's all we can get to. We'll grease it up, clean it off and grease it up here. All right, I'm gonna get my cow's grease out here and go ahead and put a nice layer of grease on this. You want to make sure you get into all the corners here, because that's where, if anything, the salt water is going to come in, is through the corners and through the edges. So those corners are easy to miss. Let's go ahead and just put a nice coating of grease on here. All right, that is done. Now take a rag and wipe off all the excess. All right. That's your finished drag washer now. So spool's done. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and service these bearings. So let's go ahead and pull the shields here first.